Hello everyone, good morning. Hello Samir, hello Kalpana, good morning. So you're all able to hear me well? Good morning Sagar, Shweta, Lopita. Okay, okay friends, thanks for the confirmation. So hope you all had a nice weekend there, and you also tried to see the assignments what we saw. And on the last class, like I think it's time for us to start now. I think we can begin as it is 7 here. Okay, friends. I think we shall get started. Okay, so we were seeing the concept about forecasting in our last class. So what is forecasting and how things are working in Tableau for a forecast. So what is something that is mandatory in order to perform a forecasting? So year field is a mandatory one. So you should have a year column or a particular at least one date dimension should be there, or a dimension with an integer value. So forecasting is in order to perform the forecasting, at least this is required, and we have to have at least a year column there. So okay. So just to continue on this, we were trying to do a forecasting for one of the data what we had. So I'll connect to that and let's see how to perform the forecasting. Okay friends, we will pick this example in order to perform the forecasting. So here if you see for this forecast, they are basically taking the month of order date, and they are taking the segment and the sum of sales of those. Okay, and they are trying to perform the forecasting based on this data. So we will try to get something very similar in nature. They have the data until 2017, and they are basically doing the forecast for, I think they have the data until November 2016, and forecast has been performed for 17 and 18 data. Okay. So first let's see how to create something very similar in nature, how to do that. And then we will move on. Okay, so we have this segment. So we'll take this segment, and so segments you can find it. And here if you see there are folders that have been created. So you know how to make a folder, right? So I think we saw about that, how to create a folders and do things. Okay. So first thing is now let's see about the forecast based on order date. So order folder is available here. Let's see if order date is there. Yeah, this is available. So I'm first taking the order date, and in the order date value, I wanted to make it continuous. So basically I would like to see it based on month level of the order date. So what is the thing, what I need to say? I would like to forecast the sales. Okay. I like to forecast the sales based on various segments. So I'm taking the segment field here, so which is there in the measures. Okay, I think let's see if there is a folder created for segment as well. Yeah, segment is available here. So I'm going to take the segment from this field. Okay. So as soon as I take the segment here, we have the data for until December 2016 we have the data. So until December 2016 the data is available for us. So that's what this is, we are able to see it from here. Okay. So now what we need to do, now let me add some forecast to this result. So how can I add forecast, friends? Can anyone tell me how to add a forecast? Okay. Samir is saying go to analytics and click on the add forecast there. Forecast, drag the field where you want to do the forecast. Okay. That's right, friends. I think you all remember it well. And how about others? Hope others also are remembering the same. So maybe we'll just, in order to replicate the same graph, we'll just add a color by segment. So I'm just taking the segment value. I'm pressing my control key, friends. I'm pressing my control key, dragging my segment and dropping it in my colors. So either I can take the segment from here, drag it, drop it in the color, or I can press my control key and then drag and drop it here. So there are two ways of doing the same thing. Okay. So this is the other way. Press your control key, drag the segment, drop it in color so that the color value comes over there. So yeah. So that is the other way of doing it. Okay. So now is there any question? I think in Tableau public forecast option won't be available. Is it disabled? Yeah, Jayashree. The forecast options would be available only in Tableau desktop. In public, it might not be there. Yeah. So maybe these are some add-on features and things. Right? So they generally don't give these in a Tableau public automatically. Yes. Okay. So now what we'll do after adding the segment to this, now I'm going to this analytics tab, and under analytics there is forecast option. So I'll just drag this forecast and add it here. Can you see what has happened? As soon as I added a forecast, the data got changed to November 2016 and my prediction started from December 2016. So you remember, friends, I told you a concept of test and the test and controls. I talked about two of those variables when explaining it to you about the forecasting concept. So I told you there are two things that needs to be taken. One is going to be a testing value, and other one would be a actual. So training data, validation data. I talked to you about two of those. Training data and validation data when I was explaining it to you about the forecasting concept. Hope you all remember that, friends. What is training data? Can anyone tell me? So when I was explaining the forecast, I talked about two things. Gautam is saying data used to train the model. That's right, Gautam, at a high level. So maybe what I'm expecting is, for example, I'm having 100 records. In that, what would be the percentage generally I take it for training, and what is the percentage that I take it for validation? Yeah, that's right, Gautam. So how about others, friends? 70-30. Shweta is saying 70% training, validation is remaining 30. Yeah, that's true. That's right. Correct. So that's what is happening here. So in a yeah, that's right, Kalpana. So how about other friends, Kanya, Jayashri? So hope you are all able to get this as well. Okay. Okay, friends. So this is what it is. The training data is going to be like 70% and 30% is going to be the validation data. However, for this particular data set, if you see, if we right click here and click on this view data, you will be able to see that. So the data, the actuals has been from Jan 2013 until we have taken the actuals until I think estimate starts from actual is from Jan 2013 until December until November, I believe. Yeah, November 2016 is the sorry, November 2016 is the actual data. So it has basically taken among everything actual data as November 2016, and it is basically finding as the estimate from December until the next one full year it is giving us the estimate. So until December 2017 it is giving us the estimate for all three segments here. So as soon as we added the forecast is basically enabled for customer actual and for customer estimated. So you can just see that. So it's basically giving us the forecast estimate for all those months which we are not having here. So what are the other options that are available in forecast? So under forecast, if you go, there is something called forecast options that are available. Okay. Kanya is asking a question. Your graph column shelf has month of order date, but the graph is showing year. Okay. I'm just closing this for a while. So see here, this is what my graph is showing. So this is, though this data is showing as year here, Kanya, this month of order date. So generally when we are applying forecasting here, can you see, as soon as I hover over this point, it is showing me the data for individual month level. It's basically showing me the data for month level. However, this particular axis alone, it is showing as an year there. So basically the tick marks and the ones what we are able to see over here, that is what is showing as years. So in order to change the layout here or make any changes, what you can do is, so basically you can just right click here and there is something called, you selected a month, right? And you can just select the custom format here. And for example, if you want the day to be month/year or something like that, you can just click on OK. And now can you see me? As soon as I change this axis, the value gets sorted based on month, and you are also able to see the data. So in generally, for viewing purpose, the graph has been generated as an showing it, but however, still you can just get into that and change that value, what we are saying. Okay. Okay, how to change that? Yeah. So don't worry, Kanya, if your graph is showing something different, it should have been this option, what I'm showing it to you. You can just right click here, go to this more option and select custom from this. So under this custom, you can just select month/year or something like that, so that your graphs can show data month-wise also. But generally, month, year of order date. Can you see here my formula got changed and my forecast has also been done for the whole month there. So if you see that you can't see much of forecast here when you are doing it for a very small level range, that is by months if you are doing. So that's why it's just coming showing as an year forecast, it would be much more appropriate. So that's why the graph is also showing us that data. So here you can just see that for this particular data, the forecast is, this is what it is all over the period. You got this, Kanya? Are you getting me? You can just change it by right clicking top and then change it to a month level also. Yes. Okay friends, so now we are done with this forecast part. So we'll just see a few more options which is available in forecast. So the options that are there in forecast is, I'm going here and clicking on the forecast option, and here automatic is the default selection. Based on the last previous data, it generates the forecast for next 13 months. So which includes the actual data also. So for us, the actual data was December 2017. So we were including the December data also along with this forecast. Okay. And then moving on with the fourth. Okay. So yeah, sure, Manikandan, I'll just come to that question. Yeah. So here, what is happening, friends? So basically, I'm selecting it. So ignore last 1 month. So why it has generated me the forecast for last December, from December 2016, though I have the data. Here, this is the reason. So here I have basically ignored my last 1 month, which means ignoring last 2 months here. I'm just changing the option to ignore last 2 months data. So when I'm just showing that and also fill the missing values with zeros, when I'm just doing this, you can just see now. Now my data is getting generated from November 2016 itself. So here I can change that option. Right click here, go to the forecast and click on this forecast option, and I'll be able to change this ignore last 2 months data. I'll be able to change that forecast. Okay. So, and next thing here, what we would be considering is the forecast model. So I think this is where we left sometime last week. So what is seasonality, friends? What is seasonality? What is seasonality? Can someone tell me? I think Gautam, you were saying it last class, yeah. For a particular month, there is a sudden change in data, either upwards or downwards for every year. That's perfect. That's absolutely right. So, yes. So, the best example for seasonal changes is, friends, sales which is happening in the month of Diwali. Or Christmas. So what happens during these months? There would be a spike in buying patterns, spike in spending. So maybe in terms of clothes or other accessories. So you can see a spike in trend there. So either the movement can be upward or can be downward. And what happens in the month of January, the next year, January, February or the other years, if you see, generally the sales would be not that high. We can't expect the sales to go up the first quarter. The reason being is just now a spending season has got over, and because of that, there might be a drop in sales in each of those items there. So either it may be any other items what you are purchasing. So this is what we call them as seasonal factors. Yeah, Christmas, the price goes up for air price, everything goes up, air price, ticket price goes up, and the buying patterns of the customers, we see there is an increase. That's perfect, Jayashree. Data to increase or decrease over a period of time, that's true, that's right. So this is what we call them as seasonality, friends. Okay, so when we are selecting automatic here in the forecast model, you can customize this forecast model. Okay, so when you are selecting by default automatically selects an exponential smoothing model of data that may have a trend, may have a seasonal pattern also. So when you are selecting this to be automatic, automatically it detects for seasonal changes, and also it detects for any other changes in the model. So if at all there is a change in the model or some data is spiking up in certain months, it captures those changes and it implements that changes for the forecasting also. So this is what we can select. We can just select automatic without seasonality. Can you see here when I am selecting automatic without seasonality, what is happening there? I am saying selecting automatic here. Carefully observe this forecast trends towards my right. I am selecting automatic, and when I am selecting automatic without seasonality, and you see here, everything is flat. Everything is flat. All lines here are looking flat totally. And there is also other options what you can do, something called custom forecasting, where you can just say the trend to be, there are two things, one is the additive trend and a multiplicative trend. So nothing but, additive trend is nothing but like, for example, when you are having data in every month, December, you are having a spike in the data. So what happens, generally whatever spike number, for example, if the spike percentage is like 10%, and next year it just adds up 10% to the existing sales. So that's what it does. So in a multiplicative trend, what it does is if there is a trend change of like 10%, it basically multiplies the trend. So it will show more trend there in a multiplicative factor, and also season also there is additive and multiplicative. I'm just selecting multiplicative for now just to show you that. Can you see now? As soon as I did it, the trend lines are bigger here whenever I'm selecting the multiplicative trend compared to an additive trend. You can just see how that is looking, additive trend. The trend lines are not that high, it has got reduced and the forecast is somewhat looking better. And now the answer for your question, Manikandan, the last one, when you saw that, the earlier part of that, we didn't see much spike in home office segment. But when I'm customizing this particular forecast option, I'm able to see more trends coming there to the data. So this is what it's like, what we can do using the forecast. So now you are able to see the trend coming out there because I'm just changing the trend model there. So generally in a normal terms, it is preferable to keep it the automatic level because Tableau determines which has more trend and which does not have more trend. Automatic model should be the best in all times. And it is saying the forecast is not that high for this segment because they are not able to see much of sales in this. So that's the reason why it is not able to predict it, and mostly it is flat all over the years. Irrespective of every month, it is flat. Okay, so the break in the line, Balaji, what I told you is, sometime before we discussed about the training data and the validation data. So for example, this 100 records what we have, out of that 70 would be considered as training data and remaining 30 would be considered as validation data. So here what is happening is, this is my actual forecast. The break indicates that this is going to be a forecast for the future. The break with a kind of a shaded symbol which is coming there, which literally means it is going to be a forecast. So that's what we are assuming this. So that's why there is a break. The break basically indicates that this is going to be a forecasted value. So from here onwards, you have the actual data until October. From here, from November 2016 onwards, it's going to be the projected one. So that's what it's able to tell us. Yeah, Balaji, yes. Like last session, we just saw that somewhat, but after some time, like there were some issues there last week, and I think you should have missed that. Not a problem. I'm just saying, any data if you take, forecasting is done based on these two models. One is the training, and the other one is the validation. Based on these two, the forecasting would be done. Okay. So now moving on, you can just right-click this forecast and click on go to this forecast and describe the forecast also. So once you describe the forecast, it shows us different values here, friends. Can you see here? The model which is going to be used here is exponential smoothing, which is forecast is basically based on Jan 2013 until October 2016 data. The forecast forward is for 14 months, and the measures are sum of sales, and time data is order date. So seasonal pattern, 12-month cycle it is getting us, and it basically changed from initial November to December. It is basically giving us the values. So there is a plus or minus value here, friends. For a forecast option, there is always a plus or minus value which is always there. So you can predict the forecast until 95% accuracy only. There might be a change in plus or minus 5. So that's what we are able to see, like from 95% confidence intervals from this graph. So if I'm right clicking here and showing you the confidence intervals here, forecast options, by default if you see the show prediction interval is 95%. So that is default. Either I can choose 90, 95 or 99. I'm choosing 95 for more accurate data. So 95 would be the best one and appropriate thing to choose. Now when I'm describing the forecast model, you can just see that, describe the forecast. You will be able to see that based on this plus or minus is because of that. So 43,000 is 721 is the actual. There can be a plus or minus change of 12,677 for this segment. And similarly plus or minus 8,437 for this, and like this, so on and so forth. Like this, the forecast values can change across. So, and here also it gives you a quality there. So quality of the forecast, the first one is looking good, the second one is looking okay, and the third one is poor. So Tableau itself is suggesting you that the third one, the forecast, is poor because it doesn't have much of appropriate data there, and moreover this forecast can't be predicted much. That's what it is showing. It's saying the forecast quality is poor. So that's why there was a flat line there, Manikandan, for your question. That's why there was a flat line there. And these are some of the statistical formulas what this is calculating. There is something called alpha, beta, gamma, 3 variables are there. This is more into statistics. So what this forecast does even more is about, these things are generally used by statisticians in order to perform certain operations and characteristics. Okay, so here is a link for you all to check out with. You can just go through this link for more information, additional information for forecast. But the one what I gave you is an extensive one which covers everything, but for your future reference you can have this also. Okay, and so this is what we have it in the forecast option. So now there is something called, I'm just right clicking here. So there is a forecast symbol which is there. So you can just see that symbol appearing here in the forecast. You can just right click here and okay, that option is not available. I'll just show it to you in a while. Okay, so what we have seen till now, we saw about how to add a forecast, and we saw what are the various things, estimated forecast results, how this is looking, and what is the actual results. And we saw about the forecast option which is available, and we can basically say the forecast length, how long you want this forecast. It's automatic, exact, and until. You can just choose that. And there is something called aggregate by. So aggregate by for us was for quarters. So specify the granularity. So nothing but it chooses the best granularity estimate. So Tableau by default chooses it. So automatic quarters would be the default estimate for Tableau. So it is choosing it by default. So ignore last and other things are basically ignore the last month data. How many months you want to ignore? We just saw that we increased from 1 to 2. That is this value. Fill in the missing values with 0. So if there are missing values, null, you may fill those values with 0. So this option is there. Everything is available and that's this forecasting. And this is what I told you about the model. So forecast none is when you select none, the model does not assess the data for trend and does not select any seasonality. Additive model is one which combined effect of several independent factors. So basically it sums up the totally isolated factors. So it basically takes up the trend and it sums up the trend across all periods. Multiplicative is one which combined effect of several independent factors is the product of isolated effects. So isolated effects here is the change in trend. So sometimes it might be like the forecast is looking downward trend or it's going upward trend. So basically these isolated events or effects are multiplied there. So that we call them as multiplicative model. Okay. And so there is also a summary which is available currently using what information. These things we are able to see that. Okay friends. So here is a question for you. Give me the report on precise detail of monthly sum of profit for 2016 and this year. Okay, Manikandan is saying forecast is coming out with a value for upper and a lower value. Can I choose my upper and a lower value? Exactly, Manikandan. You can do that. So that is what this question is also about. If I'm right clicking this field and sum of sales, can you all see this? I'm right clicking here and there is something called forecast result. So here basically upper prediction interval, lower prediction interval, there are two things which is available. So if I'm just right clicking that particular sum of sales, there is something called upper prediction interval, what I can select. So it just shows me the upper prediction value alone. Can you see this? It just shows me the upper prediction value alone, it doesn't show me anything else. So here I can right click this particular field and select the forecast result. I can select the upper prediction or a lower prediction value. Or I can just say the percentage alone. Or here I can mention the precision also. Okay. So how to do this, friends? So what I will do, I will do a control click on my sum of sales. I'm dragging it and dropping it on my tooltip. So as soon as I add that sum of sales to my tooltip, a prediction value comes. I right click here, I go to this forecast result and I'm saying precision. I need the precision also. So now what happens, you see, as soon as I click, the precision of sales, actual sales is 15,721, the precision may be plus or minus 12,677 for this month. For this month, it also remains the same. The precision doesn't change for every month. The precision is a common change which is there for across all months. So similarly here, instead of that, what I can do is I can right click here, go to this forecast result and choose upper prediction interval. So my upper prediction interval is 56,398. So plus the 12,500 700 value added to this. So here I can just mention that upper prediction interval of sales, or what would be my lower prediction interval of sales. Anything I can just see it from here. I can just choose that from here. As soon as I choose that, the lower prediction is this, actual sales is this much. The sales can go up to this, my actual is this. So like this I can get some options to choose what my forecast intervals are and how that is looking. Okay. So friends, you got this, everyone? Okay, now you all tell me the answer for this question. Yeah, sure, Lopita. I'll repeat that upper and the lower part. So before this, can anyone guess what would be the answer for this question? Then those who listen or those who got the thing of my upper and the lower prediction interval. Okay, Gautam is saying we need to choose the precision from the option 13521 and the upper limit. Okay, okay, Gautam, Shweta, that's right. So friends, this is how we choose the upper and the lower prediction intervals. You just go here and drag this control click on the sum of profit they are predicting. So control click and drop it in the tooltip. So after you drop this in the tooltip, you can right click this particular sum of profit, go to precision and change the precision. So here instead of this precision, if you want an upper or lower prediction interval, you can choose this upper prediction interval or lower prediction interval from here only. So after you choose that, you will be able to see the results there, which appears with your upper and lower prediction intervals or with your precision. So that's what we did here. We just went to this forecast result, and we chose this upper prediction interval or lower prediction interval. So you just need to control click the sum of sales and then drop it on the tooltip in order to see that in tooltip. So since this is an actual data, the upper prediction interval for sales is not there. This is the estimate data. Here we have it. That is the difference. Okay. So you all got this, friends? Is it clear? Forecasting. Any other questions? Lokita, is this clear for you now? Were you able to get how to add the upper prediction and the lower prediction intervals to your forecast? Okay. Okay, friends. So we are done with this. So now what we will do, next thing we are going to see a concept of clustering there. So before I extend this concept to you, friends, I would like to tell you something about, tell an example to you about clustering. So clustering, okay. First let me come up with an example, okay. So you are an Airtel customer. So assume you are an Airtel or you are going to use Telnet or any other network, AT&T or some other network. Okay, so AT&T or you have some network which is going to be a prepaid network. This is not going to be a postpaid. This is going to be a prepaid network. Okay, and assume that so when you were, so most of you should have used the prepaid SIM card sometime before. So is there someone who do not know how a prepaid card works or how things to be done in a prepaid? Hope there should not be anyone. Okay. So I am one of the Airtel customers. Okay. And maybe I'll choose like Gautam. Gautam. Jayesh. Okay. Assume that these people are there. So assume that these people are there. Okay, I am a person who will be using more, spending more time in calls, that is local calls, local mobile to mobile calls. So Gautam wants more of internet and WhatsApp and other things. So he wants more of internet stack. Similarly, Lab is using more of like assume FTP calls. Jayashree is using more of ISD calls. And Kanya is using more of like combination of both local and STD. Okay. So assume that we have these are nice preferences of various people. So this is among our 24 people only, remain 20 people only, we have these many preferences. So then there are large number of people. So you can see that Apple is sending you a promo messages, promo things that if you recharge for 20 rupees or 30 rupees, you will be getting local STD call 100 minutes free. Or local STD to the STD calls what you make would be charged 35 per minute. Like that, we have seen these Apple or this Idea or any other networks what you use in India specifically. They're giving you these kind of promotions. Hope the same thing would be available there in others also, other places. Okay. So here, then how they are able to categorize the customer into various groups. How they are able to do that? So basically they will be checking my usage, and they will be checking my usage for last 2-3 years time, and they will see like, so I am the person who have done mostly local calls only. So he is the one, they will be sending me promotions which are relevant for my local calls. If you are sending me promotions which is relevant to this ISD, I may not choose anything because I don't want that. So we are able to target some specific individuals based on their buying patterns, based on their behavioral trends. We are able to categorize them into various clusters. So assume that for me, what Apple or my service provider, what they will do, they will be putting me in this cluster. So not only I will be there in this cluster, even Kanya might be there who is using this, or who is using this STD and Kanya, they will have a separate cluster. A cluster 2 would be created for STD calls. So STD who and all are using Kanya and La. So they both will be in the cluster 2 also. And Gautam is using mostly internet, he will be in a cluster 3. So who and all are using more of internet related stuff, they will be coming under this group, and there will be cluster 4 created for Jayashree. So similarly, based on what pattern you are doing things, different clusters will be created for individual persons. Okay, so we can create clusters individually based on their patterns, and basically we can send them free promo for them. And similarly in a marketing campaign, so you must be receiving some calls from this credit cards and other things, agents, right? So all IT people who are working in IT industry or banking industry, they are coming under one cluster for them. So for all people working in IT industry, they will be getting a call that do you need a credit card, do you need a debit card, and you will be wondering how he got your number. It's nothing but they just get it from the feeds from outside, wherever you are passing out the information. They will be categorizing you based on your profession and things, and they will be making a similar offers to you, credit cards or personal loans or things like that. Okay, so this is the concept of clustering, friends. Any questions here? Is it clear? No questions? Okay, now we'll look at the concept of clustering, how it works. So clustering is nothing but is a collection of data points where each observation is similar to other observation in same cluster. So I told you, right, Airtel plan. So Airtel plan, or maybe on your own buying pattern, or based on their own similarity in nature, they will be targeted in a different clusters there. So each and everything has a similarity with itself, but they belong to a different cluster there. Okay, dissimilar to the observation and different clusters. So there is difference between this cluster and this cluster. There's always a difference between that. But our the groups within this cluster, they are similar in nature within them. Okay. So in order to perform this clustering, friends, Tableau uses a concept called K-means clustering algorithm. Okay. So what is K-means clustering algorithm? So people should have known about something called data mining. You know something about data mining, right? So what is data mining? Can anyone tell me? So data mining, okay, we have got some answers. Go to extracting data from the source, hidden trends of the data. Exactly, Jayashree, you are right. So finding the hidden patterns within the data sets. Hidden patterns that are there within the data and making the data more meaningful. Making the data more meaningful and capturing insights. Okay. So why I am talking about data mining here is Tableau is using a data mining technique here. So in a data mining technique, friends, there are two things. One is supervised data mining technique and other one is unsupervised. So this supervised data mining technique is something like this. Wherein like you will be having a person to monitor the data mining technique, how the patterns are working. You will have a individual who is sitting and his insights would be dependent on the supervised technique. So basically he validates the model and gives you the results. Unsupervised is something like it does it by default. The system itself identifies that. So this K-means clustering algorithm, K-means clustering model is an unsupervised data mining technique where the system itself takes care and it finds out for individual patterns which are similar in nature. So it basically groups the similar items. It groups the similar items based on the trends or patterns what we are giving it to. So based on the trends or patterns what we are saying, it groups the similar items and makes them fit together. So that is what this unsupervised data mining means. It groups the items similar based on a central point. It does something. So and based on your own characteristics and things, it finds out the data and mines the data and gives you the result. Okay, friends. Okay. So now let's see an example for this clustering here. Okay. Let me take, if I'm saying days to ship data, ship status, products. Okay, we don't have actually days to ship. So let me take something different here. So we don't have exactly the days to ship data here. So in order to use this clustering feature, friends, based on the data, it creates the clusters for us automatically. Okay. So generally we drop those clusters in the color view so that once they are coming, we will be able to see those clusters there. Okay. So where in real time these clusters are used? So these clusters are something like they are real time, they are used in the healthcare industry. So like using the drugs. So how better is your so for example, you are finding a new drug, new inventions, whatever you are making there in the drug industry. So they test the drug for one particular patient and see if that is working. And in that case, they see like overall in the hospital list, if you see, they should have in a normal hospitals, they should be generally taking up what are the kinds of cases that we get in a month. Mostly they should be doing some analytics or analysis in that. So what are the cases that we get most, and what are the drugs that we are prescribing for them, and how effective is those drugs. So basically categorizing the patients based on the diseases for which they come, and then seeing the effectiveness of a drug on that patient. These are some of the things that we can do using clustering, and that this really helps us. So now let's see an example. We don't have a shipment data here. So what I would choose is I would be choosing something like shipment mode, and I'll choose what else? Shipment mode. Let me have it here. Okay, and let me choose something else here. Shipment mode, maybe order date. Will it be appropriate? Average days to ship. Yeah, I can take the order date, and I'll take days there in the order date. I'll choose the date. Okay, and maybe I'll choose based on various segments. Okay, so shipment mode and the segments. Now let me see if clustering option got enabled. See, it's not getting enabled for me now, friends. The reason is the data what you are having, it should be able to create some clusters out of that data. So unless until I do that, this will not be able to help me out with that. So I'm just taking the sales numbers, dropping it now. Let me see now if cluster we are able to create among this data. Yes. So for this number, basically a cluster can be created for this. So earlier thing why it was not coming is because it was based on dates, and it was very difficult for Tableau to analyze those dates and to give us some numbers there. Okay. So by default, friends, here this is basically choosing my variables as sum of sales. So based on my sum of sales, it is grouping and categorizing the data into different clusters. So there are only two clusters of sales. So one sales is above 409041, the other one is below 409041. So if you see the data here, all the sales amount which are below this 409401 are grouped under one cluster, and which is not there, that has been grouped under a different cluster. So here, let me choose a different variable. Okay. Instead of this, what I will choose a different variable. Let me choose a variable what I wanted. Here I wanted to choose segment as a variable. Sure, Jayashree, I can just tell you, repeat that once again. So here, friends, first the data has to be in a appropriate format in order to choose a cluster for us. So what we do, I just took my shipment mode, the segment, and I took this data. So basically instead of segment, let me take even more details which have large amount of data. Let me take something called subcategories. Do we have a subcategory or a shipment status alone is there? Customer, order, customer ID, location, product. Yeah, I think I should have subcategory here. Let me take a subcategory here. So now I wanted a cluster to be created based on my subcategory items, based on their shipment mode, and I would like to see what are all the subcategories that are having various groups. So I just took my ship mode, the subcategory, and just took my sales here. I went to this analytics option and then saw if my cluster got enabled. Yes, it got enabled now. So what I do, I just take this cluster, drop it on this cluster shelf. So as soon as I do that, 7 different clusters have been created for me based on my sum of sales. So I can choose my variables, what I need to put here to be analyzed. So for now I can choose the number of clusters also, where I can manually enter 2 or 3, something like that. Or I can choose automatic, which by default it takes the clusters. Okay. So here if you see, friends, there is cluster 1 which is there. So this is saying I'm able to see a similar nature and sales in these products. If I'm getting on this cluster 1, it is saying it's highlighting me those items. Accessory segments, second class delivery, sales, and binders in first class, chairs, copiers, phone. I'm able to find a similar pattern in that sale. I'm able to group those into a single group, and here I'm able to see like this in a standard class, these are the items wherein I can group it based on the sales. And this is going to be in my cluster 3, which is basically some items which are less than 10,000 or 11,000. So these are the items what I am able to see that the sales is generally lesser than certain value. Based on sales, my clusters are being created here. So each and every cluster is being created based on the commonalities what we just discussed some time before, and it is finding out some trends and patterns in this data. Okay. So here in this cluster, I can basically choose the cluster by which I need to do this. So for example, I can describe the clusters and see what this cluster is doing. And you see here sum of sales, it is saying the level of detail is going to be ship mode and subcategory. Number of clusters is 7. So what are the items? In cluster 1 I have 8 items. So it basically finds the median of those items. So basically for these 8 items it finds the median. The median is going to be something like this, 43,968, and it computes what are all the items which are nearest to this median. So for example, if there are 10 items here, so assume that in the clusters we have 10 items, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 15, 20, 21, 22, 23. Like that I am having more items here. Okay. Now what it does, so it just groups the data into different patterns, okay, and it finds the median of that. For example, if we take these first five values, so it basically takes the median as 3 here. So median can be taken as 3 for these 5 values. So what are all the items which are nearest to 3? 1 is somewhat close, 2 is close by, 4 is close by, 5 is close by. So 1, 2, 4 and 5 will be coming under cluster 1. So this is what it is doing here for this data. For this data it is finding the centers, and based on the center it is basically calculating the clusters. Now how many items are near to each other, how many things are there. Okay. Samir has a question, can we set a condition for a cluster manually? No, Samir, we cannot. So that's what I told. It's an unsupervised technique wherein you cannot do any manual intervention to this clusters. The only thing what you can choose is the number of variables what you can give. That you can choose. And how many clusters you wanted, you can basically give that. But other than that, controlling the things, conditions and those things, Tableau itself calculates it based on this concept of k-means algorithm. So there are various models, which is this is what the model what we have. We have this F statistic, the p value, the r squared value, and these things it takes, and it basically computes the model. So clusters currently are being created based on sales trends. I can just right click here and click on edit clusters, and here I can choose the variables what I need to. So instead of sum of sales, I don't want my sum of sales, and you just group it based on my subcategory. So based on my subcategory, I'm able to see even more patterns there. So I'm able to see around the number of clusters are like this much. So for each and every subcategory, it is basically coming out with the clusters. So not only I need subcategory, I need my subcategory based on my I need my subcategory and sales. Based on my subcategory and sales, we compute the number of clusters. Now there are only two clusters, friends. One is based on the subcategory and sales. So these are the clusters 1, and there is basically the other one what it is finding. So if you need to know like what this cluster is doing and what the model, you can just right click here and describe the clusters to see what is the model. So it's basically grouping the items, 52 items it has grouped on the based on the centers, and the other center it has chosen 16 items. That is the most common subcategories, paper and share. Based on these two, it has created two different clusters, and this is what we are getting there. So generally, categorical variables are not included in analysis of variance in tables. So categoricals are basically the dimensional variables. So similarly, friends, you can define what cluster you need and what are the options that you need and what things you need to mention in within the cluster. You can just define that, and you can create the pattern from the data from out of that. Are you getting me, friends? How to create the clusters and how to do things? Okay. So generally, clusters are added to the colors. So whenever you are creating a cluster, whichever item which is related, they are basically grouped or characterized based on the colors. Okay. So you can control the number of clusters, and so the number of variables what we are using is based on the number of variables put in the columns of the row shells. So once the clusters are calculated, they are independent of the view. So that means how many ever, so for example here I am just adding customer ID, or if I am just adding the order there. So let me add the, or let me take some other data. Let me add the customer name, fine, let me add this. So after adding this customer name, my clusters here are basically based on this. So if you just right click here and click on describe the cluster, you will be able to see the centers and those data what we are getting. So basically the clusters are created based on the number of data and the records what you see there. Based on that, it is independent of the view. Okay, so this is what we saw about clusters. So you can just add a order priority. They have just added a cluster here, and based on the order priority, some patterns have been found. But they didn't concentrate much about clusters. They just left it with there. Okay, friends, I'm just dropping for a. So I think we want a break, right, for 5 minutes, or shall we continue? Shall we go for a break for 5 minutes, friends? Or if you want to continue, I will continue. Okay, friends. So many of you want a break. So we'll go for a break for 5 minutes and we'll come back again by 8:10. Okay, friends, I think if you are all back, shall we proceed on to the next topic? Okay, friends, I think we'll proceed as most of you are done there. Okay, friends, so we all saw about this trend lines part. So we are not going to see this in detail because already we have seen about what are trend lines, and maybe you need to answer my question. So when do we use trend lines and what purpose that trend line has? So what two values does a trend line give you, friends? So first question is, for which chart do we use trend line? Okay. Continuous. Oh my God. Okay. I'm getting answers like continuous increments or decrements from Samir, and others are saying it is bubble chart, bar, and line chart. Okay. This is line chart, trend lines, what we saw for. If you all remember, we were saying about a different chart in our last module. What we call them as, exactly, Kalpana. It is scatter plot. So do you remember, friends, we were looking at a scatter plot by checking out how my sales is performing with respect to its profits across all categories, sum of sales. Weren't we checking out this sum of profits? And we were seeing that based on various segments or categories. I just dropped the customer name in detail, and Balaji had a question, I believe, like why you are dropping customer name here and what does detail mean? My right, friends? Then we see this for this graph we added a trend line. So what trend line basically conveys us? What information does a trend line give to you? Okay. I'll just showing it to you once again for a glance. So I right clicked here and I clicked on show trend lines, and you were asking me questions like why there are three things that are coming, what this means, what is the percentage, and we saw the formulas for this, the trend equation, linear equation formula we saw. We saw the odd square value, we saw the p value. Now are you getting, friends, or is it totally blank for everyone? Okay. Okay, friends, that's right. So yeah, if you had any questions on this, please go to our previous recording. Just have a look at the trend line. Okay, I'll wrap this in a high level. So this trend lines are basically to see how one variable is related with one another. How one variable is related with one another? So it's basically the trend lines are basically helping us to find that, and it basically helps us in finding the direction and strength of a relationship. Direction and strength of a relationship. Okay. So what is direction? So direction is basically going to be upward trend or downward trend. Correct? Direction is going to be that, and strength is determined by the p-value, r-squared value, p-value, confidence intervals, we are determining that. So we saw about that, and we also saw about the trend equation. So trend lines are basically helping us to find out where exactly the relationship is going on and what is the percentage. And I also told about the strength of relationship between two variables. So it is basically determined by the p-value. P-value determines the strength of two variables, and basically the values, if it is between 0.65 and 0.80, this is moderate. Moderate, it means the strength is moderate based on the p-value. If it is less than 0.65, then in that case it is weak. So sorry friends, this is not p-value, this is r-squared value. So r-squared value, if it is less than 0.65, it is weak. If it is greater than 1, then the data may be misleading. So p-value should be always less than 0.05 p-value. So these two things we are going to see from the trend line trend. So that's what it determines, the r-squared value, the p-value, and this is what it is. So based on those variables, whatever we are seeing, a trend line appears for that, and we will be able to note it down. You can also edit the trend line. I just told you how to do that editing. Click here, edit trend lines. There are various trend lines, linear, polynomial, logarithmic, exponential. We'll see about some of those, and show confidence bands I don't want, and recalculate the data points and this. So based on whatever we are doing a selection here, the trend line comes for that, and this is for the home office. So a trend line comes for each and everything as you select basically. So it basically shows you the trend line for all three. So that's what we saw these things somewhat earlier, but we'll just revisit that at a glance. For any questions, please stop me. Anything. Okay. So that is used to represent the behavior of a set of data to determine a certain pattern. It is a line indicating a general course of tendency in something, or important tool in analysis, both trend and identification and confirmation. So that's what the trend lines are used for. Basically, there are two types. One is the logarithmic, exponential, and polynomial. 4 types there. Linear one, what we saw. The other one is a logarithmic, and next is exponential and polynomial. There are also other types. Basically, the formula in which it is calculated, that is different. So for a linear trend line, the general formula is y equal to, that is the slope of a trend line, y, that is equal to mx plus b. This is what the equation what we saw. So this equation will differ across each and everything. It's basically statistics there. So this is what it is. So based on each and every trend line, it can be built differently. Okay. So in a linear model, so When to use which model? We'll see that. So when to use which model of trend line? In a linear model of trend line, if you see, this basically built when you need to. So basically, when there is the data is linear, only when the data is linear, that point of time we can make use of this. So it basically depends on two things, two variables. One is the input variable and the other one is the output variable. So based on the variables what you are passing, if they are having linear in nature, if they are linear in nature, in terms like, for example, this variables what we saw here, based on the p value, r square value, you can tell like, so the r square value is very low here, 0.25. So what I'm going to do is here, friends, I'm just going to edit this trend line and see this maybe for a logarithmic or polynomial. So let me see for logarithmic. Can you see now my trend line how it goes? Now my r square value is somewhat better. Isn't that true, friends? My r square value is somewhat better. My r square value is somewhat better than my previous. Let me see how my trend line suits for other models. I'm just editing and changing it to exponential model. And this is my exponential model. Let me see my p value. The r square value is lower in this model as well. And so this is how you determine, friends. You just change it to different models there and see how trend lines appears for each and every model. So for example, for my consumer segment, this is what is my trend that is being seen. So this is somewhat okay, but out of all four, my best fit model here was logarithmic model, the second one. Let me edit here, edit the trend line. I'm selecting logarithmic model, clicking on OK. So here you can see that. So my r square value, what is my trend of my consumer segment? This is my trend. What is the trend of my corporate segment? This is how it is. And this is how it's for home office. So basically I'm able to see the values are originating from 0. And after the median is going, the trend is looking this direction. So basically there is a upward trend, what I'm able to see in all segments, and there is growth somewhat forecasted. And then consumer also, you have the most among all three segments. So you can choose each and every model based on the values what you are seeing over there. Okay. So when to use linear model? So when to use the linear model and other models, we'll just see that in a while. So for example here, the logarithmic model is best fit and most useful when the rate of change in the data increases or decreases quickly. So when the rate of change in the data, okay, Kalpana is asking, will Tableau give the best model by default? No, Kalpana, Tableau generally gives the linear model for us when we are choosing it by default. So most of the cases, linear model should be suitable for us. But in other cases, the ones what we saw, in these scenarios you can choose the other models. Okay. So when to use logarithmic model? So it is best fit when the data is like the rate of change in data increases or decreases quickly and then levels out. Then this model is useful. So here what I'm saying, the rate of change in data. So this is what they are saying. So in the consumer segment, if you see, the rate of change in data, it spikes up suddenly and then it goes normal. In that case, logarithmic model will be suitable more. So that's why in our case, we just saw from 0, the data got slowly increased and suddenly, and after that it levels out. It is steady after that. So these kind of data when we are having, in that case, that's what we are able to see from the r square value. The r square value is 0.432. So which is less than 0.65, the model is still weak, but it is closer to 0.65. So we can say it is not that weak, it is somewhat weak, slightly weak. So if I am choosing for the same graph, if I am choosing the linear model, you see what are the R squared value. I'm just editing the trend line. You see what is the, in a linear model, what is the R squared value. And you see here it is just drawing a straight line there, and it is saying the R squared is 0.25 only. So basically my logarithmic model was more appropriate compared to this linear model in this case, because my data initially was low and then it studied up and then it levels down. However, in a linear model we are not able to represent it, we can just represent it in form of a straight lines only in a linear model. So in our case, logarithmic model was better compared to a linear model result. Sure, Sagar, I can just change the axis values. So I'm just changing the profit towards this and sales towards here, friends. We'll now see the data. Yeah. So this is what it is. So maybe that view was not that comfortable for you. You can just make use of this view. So this is better. So the data goes from here, it starts from here and then it levels out as we move on. And this basically helps us to see how a data model is and how to choose which one among. You can just edit this trend line, change it to linear and see the R squared value. Now, what is the R squared value for this? It's still the same trend. So basically the R squared value is not getting changed. I'm changing it to logarithmic itself because it's suiting my data more there. So this logarithmic is best fit, that's most useful when the rate of change in data increases or decreases quickly and then levels out. So initially it decreased and then it is increasing and it's getting leveled out automatically. You can just see that from for each and every segment this is happening there. So for corporate this is weak, and for home office this is also still weak. However, for a consumer segment this model was better. So I can choose any of the models, friends, among this, and I'll be able to make out the data well. So based on my R squared model, R squared value, I will tell which model is best suited for me, and I can choose that model accordingly. I can just edit the trend lines and see in which model the R squared value is better and where the R squared value is very low. I can choose that and see that model. Okay. Next comes the exponential model. So here this exponential model is used when the data value rise or fall increasingly higher rates, like stock market thing, which goes up at certain point of time and it comes down all of a sudden. So so you cannot create a zero or negative values when they are there. You cannot create an exponential model. So basically this is more suited to the exponential. Yeah, sure, I can try exponential for consumer segment, Manikandan. I'll show you how this is looking. So exponential thing helps you. See here for us the data is mostly concentrated towards this region and it stabilizes mostly. So for us, let's try out now the exponential model, where for an exponential model the rise and fall has to be very steep. So it has to have, like for both, it should have both the things there. So this is the exponential model, friends. You can just see my R squared value. See, R squared value is looking even better than my logarithmic model in an exponential model. So my data trend, how this is looking is for my consumer segment. This is my model. 0.39 is my R squared value, which is good. Not good, it's okay. And here we see for corporate, this is how it is. And for home office, this is like 0.57. Okay. is really looking good for home office. So here if you see the data patterns, friends, the data is, there is a sudden increase and there is a decrease, increase and that it is happening. So the spike is that heavy here. So in this case, exponential model is also suiting it better. So, but only problem with the exponential model is it can represent only the positive values. So generally this model is suited whenever there are positive values only, and when you are seeing there is high spike and there is sudden dip, these kind of trends are there, you can better represent it in an exponential model. Next, going on with the polynomial. So, so here this polynomial model is something which is really helpful for a very large data set. So when the data volume is really high and a very large data is available, the polynomial can be used. So this is basically you can right click here, edit the trend line and click on polynomial. There is also a degree here which is that. So just because it's polynomial model, it is something very similar to a trend linear model, but it's not giving you much difference. But in terms of the equation, you will be able to see the difference there. And you see here sales to the power of 2 and 0.1657 into sales plus or minus 12573. So this is the equation. So polynomial data model is really suitable when the data set is very large. So see here it is this polynomial model is used when data fluctuates. It's useful, for example, for analyzing gains or losses over a large data set. So basically, when your data set is very huge, that point of time, this model is more suitable. But in most of the scenarios, friends, linear model should fit the thing. But in other cases, like maybe remaining 40% of the cases, we might use one among this, like logarithmic, exponential, and polynomial. So it's better to know when to use what, so that it's easy for us to use that model. Is this clear, friends, everyone? Okay. Now moving on to the trend line, you can just add a trend line from this analytics tab also. So here for the same data, I am removing this trend line. So I'm just removing this trend line, friends, for now. Okay. I'll show you how to add it from analytics tab. Just go here to this analytics, and there is a trend line option very similar to this, and you can just choose the trend line here, a linear, a polynomial, or anything. Based on the trend line what you are choosing, the same options comes there, but it's the other way of doing the same thing. That's what we are seeing in the trend line. You can just edit the trend line, see these options, what we saw now, and there is a confidence bands and the confidence intervals. So in statistics, p-value is the number assigned to a concept of significance. P-value should be less than 0.05 always. A large p-value can indicate that the apparent trend in the data is due to chance. So in our example, we have very small p-values. And R-square tells what is the strength of the model, how better the model fits. The value can range from 0 to 0.65, 0 to 1. So this is the actual numbers. I think they have not given that in the slide, but you can make a note of this numbers. So if it is 0 to 0.80, it's moderate. Less than 0.65 is weak. It's greater than 1, the data may be weak or misleading. Okay, so this is what it is. I'm just typing this part to you all so that you can make use of this data. Okay, so this is the actual numbers for the trend line. Okay, and R squared is in their example the R squared was 0.956. In our example the R squared was not that high, it was like 0.4547. So we have to choose the models accordingly. So you can make use of the colors and add the trend line based on that. Now this is the knowledge check for you all friends. Let me know what is the answer for this. Can you answer the first question here? Okay, first one most of you have answered is B, and second one is B as well. Okay. For first one it is B, and second one, manager of a company wants comparable list of products which generates profit even after providing customers with discount. What do you suggest for him? Okay. So for first question it is B, and for second question it's B as well, and some of you have answered it as D. We'll see what is the right answer. For first question, low p value, higher R square value. That's right. Large p value can indicate the apparent trend is due to chance. The R square indicates the perfect fit, which basically tells you the strength of a line. Okay. And for this, the manager of a company wants a comparable list greater than 5%. What do you suggest for him? It is combined sets. We need to create a combined set here. So first profit, we need to create a set for profit greater than 0, and then we need to create another set for discount greater than 0.05 and combine them to form a single set. Yeah, that's right, Jayesh. That's great, friends. Those who have answered it right, that is the right, and the other one who haven't answered it, you can note it down for your future. Okay. So the next thing what we are going to see here is, friends, about the reference lines. So reference lines, what purpose they are used for, I will tell you that first, and let's see some examples for that. Okay. So we had some data here. So let me take any of the live examples what I had. Okay. Let me create a new sheet here, friends. So I am saying my segments, based on my segments and based on my category. Yeah, category is there. Let me take category this time. I am taking segments always. Let me take categories this time. Let me take my categories and let me take my subcategory items. Okay, yeah, Balaji. Balaji wants to know if do we have our class on Diwali on Wednesday as well. So for now I am instructed to take the class, Balaji. I haven't got any options because this week fully it is showing me as I have a class. So maybe friends, if you don't want to have a class on Diwali, you can let me or let the Eureka team inform. So generally, like for me, I think I should. I'm taking the class for now. Maybe based on your request, I can pass on the same to them, or you can directly request them. That would be even better. So friends, if you want, if you cannot attend the class on Diwali, I understand that. So maybe Balaji can just send a mail to the support@edureka.co, this email ID, and ask them like if you are okay for a class or no, you can just let them know. So that based on the number of responses that we are getting, we will be having it done. Because it's going to be a class spread up across all locations. So maybe for us the Diwali is on Wednesday, and for others it's on the Wednesday evening, night. For our night would be the Diwali for others. Yeah, you can just, so as of now the class is there, it's on schedule. So there are no changes for now. Okay. Okay friends, so now I'm having my categories and subcategory items there. Okay. So I'm having my categories and subcategories. So now I wanted to know my sales there for all the category, subcategory items. I would like to see it as a bar graph instead of seeing it as this. I'm just swapping the axis to make it look better. And I'm clicking on my category and dropping this on my colors. Control clicking on the category and dropping it on my colors. Okay. Now what I'm doing is I'm just sorting it based on the ascending order of the sort and things. Okay. Now friends, what I want is, I wanted a reference line for this graph. Reference line which says that, so wherever my profit is greater than certain value, I would like to see those items. I would like to know where and all my profit is clearly lower than certain values, I would like to see those items as well. So in that case, so for example, yeah, so this, in this case, when I'm seeing those items, I would like to have a reference line for that. So how to add a reference line? So it is just like that. And you see here, reference line, reference band and distribution. These three things are there. I'm just adding a reference line. When I'm adding a reference line, it's asking me three options. One is the table level, other one is at the pane level, and other is at the cell level. First, let's understand the difference. A table is, this is a whole table. The entire data is at a table. Pane is, these are individual panes, like furniture is a pane, office supplies is another pane, and technology is another pane. Okay? So this is at the pane level. And this is at the cell. Each and everything here, we call them as cells. This is at the cell level. So whenever I'm adding a reference line, it is asking me these three options where you want to add a reference line. For first, I'm choosing the reference line to be added at the table level. So as soon as I click on this reference line, friends, a new window gets open for me, and it is basically saying where my average sum of sales. So compute the line based on my average sum of sales or maximum or minimum or some value what you are choosing. Either you can choose average or median or maximum or minimum or anything value. So for now I am keeping it as average. What you want? I want a line and a confidence interval. Both I wanted. So confidence interval is what? That is plus or minus the actual value. So it can go up or go down based on the confidence interval. I can choose that. Okay. And what you wanted, I wanted a line only, but I wanted a dotted line. So I am choosing a dotted line. And how thick I need that line? I need at least in this much thick that line to be. So I am choosing that thickness. I want the line to be in a different color. So I am choosing the different color. or I'm choosing something different than the usual line what I used to have. I'm choosing that, and I'm clicking on OK here, friends. And now can you see what has happened? Now a reference line I have got, it is saying my average sales across all three categories, subcategories is 135, 129. And my confidence intervals is this much, 95% of confidence is 188, and which is at a lower level of confidence is 82. So this is how your sales can fluctuate, the average can fluctuate between this and this. So similarly, I can edit this trend lines show, or reference lines, I can edit that. So how to edit the reference line? The same way, just click here and edit. Can you see that? So you are seeing the sum of sales, average computation, line and the confidence interval you are seeing a dotted line here. Similarly, I can basically check on any other measure values, what I can make use of that. So all measures are listed here, friends. So sum of sales or sum of profits, whatever things that you have, it's getting listed here. Okay, 95%, why there are two lines is, Balaji, one is the upper limit and the other one is the lower limit. So the upper limit can range between the upper value and the lower value. That's why this is the average, and this is the upper limit, and this is the lower limit. So that's why this value is like that. So this is the confidence interval. Basically, confidence intervals always have upper limit and a lower limit. So whenever we are using them, we'll have those two lines. Okay, so this is the line at the table level, friends. So entire table gets the line. Next is going to be at the pane level. Pane level here, I told you each and everything is an individual pane here. So for this my average is 185 for this pane. For this pane my average is 79,000, and for this my average is 209,000. So my confidence band also varies across each and every pane because it basically depends on the values what I am choosing there. So based on my pane level, my confidence band also changes along with my pane. So this is another thing to note. When you are editing a reference line, you can just right click here, click on edit, and choose the pane option here. So each and every individual pane gets a line. Okay, so the business usage of this reference line, friends, it's basically nothing but like a pointer for us to understand how much our growth has been. So pointer in the sense, in the business scenarios, I as a CEO of a company can know what has been my average sales. So how many items have performed above average? How many items have performed below average? How many items I need improvement? In each category, what are the items that needs improvement? I can basically make use of that with the help of this reference line. So the main purpose is to see how your performance is and to make your view even more in a better manner, just to enhance the view rather than having a normal graph alone may not prove to be much useful for your business. So it is for adding more purpose to your business. So that's the reason for adding a reference line. And when I'm having it per cell for each and every measure, the average is getting computed. So that's what it does for each and every dimension what we have, the value, it computes it. And there is a reference line, friends, and there is reference band. So what is reference band? So here, as Manikandan asked the question, what is the business usage of this? So see here, I wanted to know where my sum of sales is minimum or maximum, or I will say wherein my sum of sales is average and maximum alone. I would like to see that. I want to see it as a reference band here. So I'm saying you fill it with some colors like this, some lighter shades of blue or something like this. You fill it with this. You draw a line. You draw a line with a dotted mark, which just shows you this, and you have it done for per pane. You have it on. And now when I'm clicking on OK, can you see here, friends, what has happened? It is showing me this is my average and this is my maximum. This is the sales. This is my average and this is my maximum. So for each and every pane, it is basically showing me my reference line. So what has been my average here and what has been my maximum. So how many are above average and how many have reached the maximum. So I will be able to easily note that. So see here for this categories, appliances, binders and storage are above average. They are doing good sales. And similarly, chairs and tables are doing good. So furnishings and bookcases are the lowest one, which are not even doing average sales. So this information is crucial for me to take some business decisions for me. So unless until I am having a reference band for that, I won't be able to see that. Okay. So this is what we are able to see that. And there is also something called distribution here. So distribution is something like very similar to a reference band, but however you can choose here the distribution. So you would like to select the items. Here we have something called percentages, percentiles, quantiles, standard deviation. So we are going to see, so percentages are something represented in 100%. So on a base of 100%, above 60 and 80% of my average, you display that to me. So what are the items that have reached my 60 to 80% of my average? Can you see? I'm able to see my 60% of my average is going to be this. So bookcases, tables and chairs, and 80% of average is like 148, 400, that is tables and chairs. So similarly, for each and every pane, I'm able to get what would be my 60% of my average and 80% of my average sales. Based on my average sales, how these things are differing across for each and every pane. So that's what we are able to see from this graph. So this reference lines are used for that purpose. You can choose that, and there is something called distribution also here. So there is something called percentiles, quantiles and standard deviation. You can choose the percentiles also. So percentiles are slightly different than percentages, friends. So percentiles are more appropriate way of calculations. So for example, in competitive exams such as CAT or GMAT or I don't know about SAT. So do you have percentile scoring? So percentile, I think in SAT also we have percentile scoring, SAT and GMAT or other exams what we write, GREs. So here this percentiles are something like, for example, there are 10 people who wrote the exam, and out of those 10, one person has scored above 90, and remaining all 4 or 5 of them have scored like 50, 40, 30. Now what happens, this 90% who has got, that score will be treated as 100 marks and 100 percentile, and the persons who have scored next mark from 90, how much is from next mark, what was score, maybe assume it's 50. Then the second person who scored that 50 would be as 99 percentile, and then it will come down towards. So basically it is a rational way of scoring. It is even better way of scoring there compared to percentages in certain cases. So we can use something called percentiles also. We'll see how percentiles are looking like. And you see here 95 percentile is this much, and these many items are below 95 percentile. These many items are there. So it's basically giving us some percentile values. So how much is the value and how many are below the mark, above the mark. When you want to see it is better for comparison. Similar to percentile, there is something called quantiles also. So quantiles is divided by 4, friends. So divided by 4, 3, 2, you can decide the numbers. It divides the entire data by that number. So for example, if I chose 4 here, this is the lower quartile. And the median comes here and this is the upper quartile. So like that, the value gets divided into 4 and this is also helping us for comparison. So basically these comparisons are mostly used in statistical analysis, friends, to see how things are looking and what are the quantiles, how measures are below that quarter, how many are above that quarter. To see these, we generally use these things. Okay. So not much you will be using, but mostly you can understand the reference lines in detail. That will help you out in taking it. Okay, so 95% confidence intervals, I'll just show that to you, Manikanda. Just give me a moment. So here we saw about the reference lines. This is for the entire table. This is how we get per page, per cell we get something like this. So you can perform aggregations on these reference lines like total, average, maximum, minimum, the median and this values. And you can also have some reference labels set. So what is the value you need to display? So okay, along with this I will show you one more thing what Manikandan asked now. So here we had the different things, friends. So I'm just editing this reference line, changing it to a line format, and we saw something called confidence intervals here. So what is confidence interval? This is fixed by default 95%. This is not highlighted here. This confidence interval would come mostly in terms of distributions. When we are using standard deviation, so standard deviation of a population, or when we are using certain other things, that point of time we might be able to see something called confidence intervals which comes into picture. So for now, the confidence intervals is default, it is kept as low, friends. So here you can just see this average, minimum, maximum. So Manikanda, I believe you are asking the confidence interval which is displayed here 95%, right? 95. %95 confidence. Are you saying about this, Manikanda? Okay, so the first example chart. So the first example chart here, it's for the entire table or per cell we choose. So this was the first example what we saw. We saw the fill above and fill below. What colors you wanted, we choose that here. And so this is basically based on sum of sales. So average, this one. So the first chart, if you see, this was the chart. So this one, right? Line and confidence interval. Correct. So here, this confidence interval is something, Manikandan, plus or minus this particular value. Why this is above the maximum? This is what your question is, right? So there is a formula for calculating this confidence interval, Manikandan. So this is plus or minus certain value to this average. So for example, if the total value is something like this, so this confidence interval basically tells you plus or minus certain value here. So here in this part, when the confidence interval is set to be 95% confidence, so it is saying your value will range between, this is the lowest value, so this would be your lowest value, and definitely it will be between this and this. So this confidence interval is basically telling us, so your value will range between this percentage of confidence limits. So the value what you are seeing over there will definitely be between, this is your lower confidence, which is 14,000, and this is your highest confidence interval, which is like around 356, 584. So this is generally used in prediction scenarios or in that scenarios wherein you say definitely my sale next year will be between this and this only. It will not come below this. So that is what this confidence interval is saying about that. So that is why it is above this maximum also. So the confidence interval is saying it can go above the value what I have specified also, but for now it is the actual is this much. That is what it is saying. Are you getting it, friends? Everyone? No. Okay, friends. So with this, like we are done with this reference lines thing. We just saw about how these reference lines are working and how to add the reference line per pane, how to add it per cell, how to choose the maximum and minimum values. Okay. So this is what we saw here, friends. We will see some more advanced things such as this box plots and other things in our later modules. And yeah. So this part we saw about the parameters. You know how to create the parameters. We saw this already. Just you just need to create a parameter and then add a values to that parameter. We'll see in depth how to do that on tomorrow's class. How to add a parameter and how to see the other options of parameters what we have. We'll see that in next class. So for now I'm stopping it with this, friends. So for any questions you can stop me. Okay. Okay, friends, if there are no other questions, I think we shall stop the session with this. And for anything else, you can just see the recordings and see. Please do your assignments also, friends. So for now, there are no holidays for us. We might have to have some extra classes as well. I'll let you know on the extra classes based on the portions what we complete this week. Yeah, Shweta. So once we complete the portions here, Shweta, what we would do is, so I believe by this weekend, I think we can complete at least till module 6. So 4 more modules are required. So maybe I would like to have your comfort on Saturdays and Sundays morning the same time. Let me know if you are all available on Saturday and Sunday morning the same time, so that we can have some couple of classes. Okay, Saturday, Sunday is not needed. Okay, then we shall make it as a weekday only. We'll extend it for next week. One whole week I need, at least to cover up the other modules, and maybe I'll tell you on that. So if you are not available on Saturdays and Sundays, that's okay. We'll have it as a weekday class. Weekdays we can do it, not a problem. Okay, sure, friends, not a problem. As this is a weekday batch, I'm available for next week fully. So we shall make it on weekdays itself, not a problem. So we'll do it as a weekday batch. Okay, Sagar wants to know, is there a way to download and print this presentation? Unfortunately, Sagar, we don't have an option to print it. What you can do is you can basically take a screenshot of this. And so that's what my other batch students were doing. Like they were taking a screenshot of individual slides or slides which is important for them. They took a screenshot of those and they were using it. Because the Geographic team doesn't allow this to be copied, so they don't want to have this as online. As a downloadable format, they didn't have it. Okay, friends, then I think we can stop it there. Thank you, Balaji. Thank you, Jayashree, Shantini, Sagar. You all have a great day there, friends. And Kalpana, for your question, if you can start the class from Tuesday instead of Monday, as it's Sunday night here in USA. Okay. Sure, we can work that out, Kalpana. Sure, we'll see that. We can schedule it accordingly. Okay, friends. Then thank you all. Thank you, Sagar, Lopita, Shweta, Shantini, Balaji. Thank you, everyone. See you all. You all have a great day. Bye bye.